Okay, welcome to our annual parish meeting. I am calling us to order a little bit late, and if you would join me in prayer. The Lord be with you and also with you. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in this annual parish meeting for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory. Guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. So our first order of business is to elect our 2021 vestry class. We are electing 3 people for three-year terms on the St. Anne's vestry. If you voted in the election when the mail ballots, that is what you did. And we had 3 people standing for election: ML Sandoz, Leanne Lambden, and Ray Jacob. And I think it's in my email. Something like 62 ballots were cast, and the people elected for those 3-year terms are ML Sandoz, Leanne Lambden, and Ray Jacob. So, yay! Thank you to our election committee who counted the ballots, Sandra Bennett and Corey Dryden, and Ray Jacob was also part of that committee, but he didn't count the ballots since he was on the ballot, but helped getting people to run for a vestry. So, yay. And now moving on, the report of the priest in charge.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for our annual parish meeting. Like many of us, I had a lot of goals and plans for the year at the beginning of 2020, not just personally, but also what I wanted to accomplish here at St. Anne's. Well, the tornado on March 3rd was the first indication that this year might not go according to plan. It was, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic that fully disrupted not only our functioning as a parish, but virtually everything about our lives. As we approach a year of living with this pandemic, first of all, I want to thank all of you for your support, your prayers, and your flexibility. We moved our worship service to Facebook Live and YouTube, and our coffee hour to Zoom. We prayed evening prayer and the rosary over Zoom. We've met for book clubs, centering prayer, vestry, and committee meetings, once again on Zoom. We've muted and unmuted and muted again. We've troubleshot camera angles and sound quality and internet connections. We've learned video editing and outs of licensing for music. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for sticking with St. Anne's, even when you're tired of screens. Thank you for logging on for worship from your couches and your desks and your kitchen tables. Thank you for joining in on the comments on Facebook and YouTube, and for welcoming new people into our community. The leadership of St. Anne's has been outstanding during this time, given all of the challenges of this year. Our staff members, Laura Medeiros, John Luciano, and Michael Lee, have kept things rolling. Nathan Dryden, our senior warden, Ray Jacob, our junior warden, and Dana Blickwedel, our interim treasurer, have stepped up to help out in so many ways, it would be difficult to list them all. This year, both Ray Jacob and Corey Dryden have completed other people's vestry terms, and our vestry and congregation have been blessed by their quiet thoughtfulness and consideration. Sandra Bennett is also rolling off the vestry this year after serving a full 3-year term, and her willingness to help and to challenge and ask good questions will be missed on the vestry. In particular, I would like to lift up the work of those who stepped in to offer ministry to our children, youth, and families once our children and youth minister left in July. And it became apparent that we would not be returning to a more regular schedule this fall. If you haven't checked out Lee Singleton's videos on YouTube, I highly recommend them, even if you don't have kids. Chris Dixon, Ken Love, and others have also been critical parts of this ministry, not only in producing content, but in keeping our children and families engaged with the St. Anne's community. Vicki Brown has been gathering the older kids on Zoom and once a week, and in the words of one kid, it's her favorite part of the week. Other highlights of this year that you might not be aware of: St. Anne's received a $30,000 grant from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee for tornado relief, and all of that money was distributed to people in need in Davidson County by the end of 2020. Many people broke down in tears when I handed them their checks, relieved that they would be able to pay rent, replace their kids' winter clothes, or pay for medications. In a similar vein, in the wake of the police killings of George Floyd and others and the protests around racial injustice, the St. Anne's Vestry pledged $5,000 to organizations doing anti-racist work: the Beloved Community Racial Reconciliation Task Force of the Diocese of Tennessee, Gideon's Army, the Equal Justice Initiative, and the Southern Poverty Law Center. As your priest, what I am most proud of this year is that, to my knowledge, no one contracted COVID-19 from any official St. Anne's gatherings, and through our sacrifices, we have protected one another and our community. From our initial suspension of worship to today's virtual annual parish meeting, you all have had my back in our more conservative precautions, and I truly cannot express to what degree that has made a horrendously difficult situation much easier. There is no doubt that I would rather be with you all in person, sharing the Eucharist and singing at the top of our lungs, hugging you at the passing of the peace. And I hope once we are able to do those things again safely, that we'll never take them for granted. It is likely that 2021 will be another challenging year, full of uncertainty. But there is no other community that I would rather meet those challenges with than St. Anne's. Over the past year, even in the midst of so many difficulties, I have experienced so many moments of love and grace in the context of this community. And I truly know that God is with us, renewing us and guiding us in this wilderness of COVID tide. It is an honor and blessing to be your priest and to do ministry alongside you here at St. Anne's.
I think my thank you got cut off in my overzealous editing, but thank you. And next we have our report from our senior warden.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with you all. I'd like to start by congratulating our newest vestry members. This past year has given me a new level of appreciation for those who are...
Oh, shoot.
Good morning. It's always a pleasure to be with you all. I'd like to start by congratulating our newest vestry members. This past year has given me a new level of appreciation for those who are willing to give of their time, talents, and wisdom to ensure the vitality and longevity of our community. Included in that number are, of course, those vestry members who are concluding their terms. Thank you for all you've done for us this year and throughout your time on the vestry. Far too much has happened in the past year for me to recount in the brief time I'll ask of you all this morning. I do want to draw your attention to a few of the exceptional efforts, events, and milestones that illustrate everything I love about the St. Anne's community. In early March, Mother Kira first shared guidance regarding a viral infection known as COVID-19. But for many members of St. Anne's and other Nashvillians, this news was soon overshadowed by an event we're all too familiar with, a tornado. Unlike the storm of 1998, our property saw minimal damage with the loss of a single hackberry tree. a lone survivor of the previous storm. Many of our neighbors were not so fortunate, and the work to rebuild homes, churches, and businesses continues around us. We have been able to assist with this work through a grant we received from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. This money enabled neighbors to replace appliances, cover bills, and repurchase clothing or other lost necessities. I want to thank everyone involved in the effort to develop an accessible and equitable grant application process for distributing this needed money. As the year continued and we watched the spread of COVID-19 cases across our city, Mother Kira, with the full support of myself and the vestry, made the decision to suspend in-person gatherings at St. Anne's. For many of us, April was the last time we were able to gather together around the table. The Episcopal tradition is a profoundly sacramental one. As someone for whom this part of our faith tradition resonates deeply, these changes caused me to reflect on what it means to be in community with one another and the practices that form us as the body of Christ. With each milestone of the liturgical calendar, Holy Week, Easter, and eventually Advent and Christmas, these questions were raised anew. I want to acknowledge and to sit with the spiritual challenge that this represents. I also want to acknowledge and commend the courageous leadership of Mother Kira, both here at St. Anne's and throughout the diocese. There is certainly not a playbook for ministering through a pandemic that's taught in any seminary. However, I do think Mother Kira could write one. She certainly can add digital video production to her resume. Mother Kira has not had to navigate these challenges alone. St. Anne's has benefited from the leadership of many, and the creativity and commitment I've seen in our parish is inspiring. With the unexpected departure of Alice Koch, our children and youth minister, in July, it wasn't clear what kind of programming we would be able to provide to our youth. Our teachers, Lee Singleton, Vicki Brown, Ken Love, and Chris Dixon, knew that during this period, more than ever, the children of St. Anne's needed continuity and engagement. Throughout the fall and winter, they built a digital education program for children of all ages. I'm continually amazed by the skill and creativity they've shown in writing, preparing, and filming these lessons. To say nothing of the time they've dedicated to delivering craft kits door to door, hosting discussion groups and virtual chats. Thank you all for everything you've done. It is truly exceptional. Our other programming has also continued, albeit in modified form, including the outreach ministries such as Room at the Inn. Teams led by Chris Dixon and Ray Jacob have worked with the Campus for Human Development to find ways to assist our unhoused sisters and brothers during this season. And although our Titans parking program was significantly affected by the pandemic, we continue to have volunteers and a vestry committee willing to plan for and facilitate the few events that were held at the stadium. The loss of this parking revenue was one of several financial challenges we faced in 2020. Many of you will recall that this year, the Episcopal School of Nashville relocated to the former Ross Elementary School campus. While this wasn't unexpected, it does mean that we will no longer be receiving that rental income. Coupled with the parking decrease, these changes meant that our income was significantly less in 2020. However, as I stated earlier this year, the prudent management of past leadership means that we remain on solid footing heading into 2021. I cannot overstate the extent to which your generous giving contributes to this financial security. And although this security is never assured for any of us, I'm heartened by the pledges made for the upcoming year. In spite of all the uncertainty around us, your commitment is enlivening. As we head further into 2021, I'm confident in the strength of our community, and I'm looking with guarded optimism toward the day when we're able to gather together in person. Today, we continue to live in the in-between time, a place that we as Christians know well, even if we aren't always comfortable with it. In this place, I find comfort in you, the community of St. Anne's. Comfort in knowing that this is a community that predates me and will continue long after I am gone. Comfort in the knowledge that this church has always been full of gracious fellow Christians who have navigated the end of a civil war, a previous global pandemic, 2 world wars, and the beginnings of a struggle for racial and social justice in which we continue to participate and pray will bear fruit in our lifetime. I I take comfort in knowing the members of this beloved community who lives through such times were not so different from you and me. I thank you for the chance to serve you this past year as senior warden and for your prayers. Please know that you remain in mine.
All right. I was checking the chat. Any questions or comments for Nathan or me? Okay. So now, what you all have been waiting for, since I teased it at worship this morning, a special announcement that normally we would put sort of this under, I guess, our new business section in our agenda, but it does have sort of budget implications. So we wanted to make this announcement before we look at our 2020 financials and the 2021 budget. So I'm going to try to make this story kind of short. Almost 2 years ago, Jonathan Stevens, then the senior warden, and I were approached by the lawyers and the executor of the estate of a man named Richard Emmett, who had died a few months previously. And he had, to their knowledge, when he died, there was not a will or any kind of estate plan in place, and he lived alone. He didn't have any siblings, no children, no nieces, nephews, all of that. And in looking through his documents, they were able to find a holographic will, a handwritten will that he had put in place. And it named his mother as the primary beneficiary of his estate were he to die. And in the event that his mother had previously passed, St. Anne's was the beneficiary of his estate. So it has taken 2 years and the help of Robin Smith at representing St. Anne's as our legal counsel to walk this through the court system. Of course, when Jonathan and I were approached by the lawyers, they said, this will be easy. You'll get the money like by in a few months. And it's been 2 years. So the courts wanted, to do their due diligence in making sure that this was indeed where the estate should go. They got a genealogist and they did all this stuff to try and find any additional heirs. I was able, while Richard Emmett was probably not known to any of us as a regular attendee of St. Anne's, he was baptized here. I was able to find his baptismal records as well as the records of his parents' attendance and burial, and I don't think their baptism, but that they were members here at St. Anne's. So the good news is that the motion to, I meant to look up the exact terminology, but basically all of that is done. As of Friday, the motion was heard that we will be getting the estate. And so St. Anne's will be receiving the Emmett estate, which is going to be around $2 million of assets, including a house and a car, a classic car, I guess. And we have been, Nathan and Dana and I have been in conversations with the diocese about the best use of those funds. And what will probably happen is that those will be put in an endowment. And the Episcopal Endowment Corporation does this for churches. Basically, our estimate is that the interest on that endowment is basically enough to make up for the what we have lost from Episcopal School of Nashville leaving our property. So that is the special announcement. I don't think she's here, but a big thanks to Robin Smith for working with us, doing this work. And it's been a long process. The estimate right now is that we should receive the estate by like late spring, early summer, is the best estimate. Any questions, comments? Also, a plug for remembering St. Anne's in your will. Look at the good work that it can do. So if you have not done that so far, it's something I would recommend. Remembering St. Anne's in your estate planning. I would be remiss to not put in that plug. It's in our Book of Common Prayer, actually, so to advise on those issues. All right, so let's now move on to our treasurer's report. Take it away, Dana.
Great. Well, we're getting buckets of money, folks. Any questions? No. So it's actually a great intro. So basically, this past year, obviously we were challenged with COVID. We saw the impact somewhat in our contributions. And then obviously, as Mother Kira had said, the loss of the Episcopal School was also a big hit. But almost all of these were generally offset by reduced expenses. One, our youth minister resigning, we chose not to refill that post yet, and we're really looking to do that more probably mid-year this year, with the hopes that once we're back in full worship at our church. But in general, our net income came in under our budget by almost $16,000, which, for many organizations our size would be really horrendous to have to look at. But we were fortunate that we do have a lot of extra funds already outside of this very generous gift that we're getting. I think somewhere in funds around 300,000, and most of those, or a good half of that, is liquid funds for us to tap in such emergencies like this. So that's really all I have to say on 2020, the past year, unless there are any questions on that from folks. Okay, why don't we move on then into our budget for this year? Yeah, I think that, so in our budget, when we planned the budget, we kind of knew that we had this Emmett gift out there, but it wasn't a done deal. So the exercise that we did was really trying to build a budget without even considering that coming in. And then key things that we needed to recognize in it were that our actuals for 2020 were impacted by COVID-19, the move off campus by the school. And another key thing was from our stewardship drive this past year. It was very similar to what we had for our previous stewardship drive. So we let those balances remain flat. And we did also recognize our cash balances. So when we actually look at the budget this year, you'll see that we do have a deficit in our formal budget. That deficit is there because we really do want to maintain our current programs and community outreach efforts. And now, obviously, with this Emmett gift coming in, we feel highly confident that all of that will stand in place. And in fact, might even be able to look on taking on a little bit more responsibility in Christ's calling for us. Do you want to go to the next slide? Great. So here is generally just a quick overview of the highlights of our budget this year. You'll see that we do have the net income coming in 66,000 under budget. frankly, without the Emmett gift, I think we would have been able to well cover that, knowing that in following years and even by the end of this year that we should be hopefully in a more normal driver. And and that is really all I think I need to say on any of this. Are there any questions?
I just want to add that while we did keep our contributions flat for budgeting purposes, our stewardship drive was remarkably successful, and that we actually had more pledging units than we did last year. We had slightly more funds budgeted from last year, even knowing the impact of COVID on, you know, some of y'all's personal financials and job situations and whatnot. So given what I have heard from other colleagues around the church, not just in this diocese, but kind of around the church, that we actually got a higher pledge amount this year than we did last year is a good place to be in. Most churches were slightly to way down in terms of their stewardship campaigns. Any questions, comments? All right. We had no old business that I know of, and our new business was taken care of in our special announcement. Any announcements sort of for the good of the order?
I just want Doug to know that he really can't see St. Anne's through those goggles. I caught you there, buddy.
So question, if there were to be an effort for a mid-year children and youth minister hire as mentioned, where would that money come from? That's money that is actually budgeted. If you go into the full budget in the Google Drive, you'll see that there is money budgeted for that position.
Yeah, I think we actually have it coming in June, I believe, Lauren.
So that's accounted for kind of in our budgeting and in that deficit and everything. All right. Well, then I would move that we adjourn.
I would second.
All in favor?
Yay!
Aye.
Yay.
Hey, and I don't know about the fence. I mean, the gate.
Oh, if anybody has a picture of the gates, you may have seen this in the e-newsletter. If anyone has a picture of the lower gates on the parking lot, like somebody doing Titans parking or somebody when the parking lot was dedicated or something like that, if somebody has that, that would be a good thing if you could get that to either me or Laura. Those gates have gone missing, and the insurance, we need it for insurance purposes because they don't believe us that there were gates there, I guess. Okay, I'm going to stop recording.